Welcome to Coaching Chat. Here we are in episode 3 where we're joined by Sue Humphrey. Sue Humphrey is an incredibly experienced high jump coach, having coached 1996 Olympic high jump champion Charles Austin. She's also coached 3 of the 7 American women to have cleared 6 feet 6 inches or higher. She was head women's Olympic coach in 2004, member of the 1992 and 1996 Olympic staffs, and is the only female coach ever to have won the Night Coach of the Year award and the only female coach to have NCAA champions in the high jump, long jump and triple jump. So let's get cracking with meeting Sue and hearing what we can learn from her. What have been your greatest coaching successes so far, and can you tell us what you think that's been down to?
Well, I think, in dealing with individuals, there's so many different situations that are exciting. And when we say successful, I think I can pick 2 that are equally in my mind. And the first one was in the early 80s, 1980, that is, when Coleen Sommer became the first woman to clear 2 meters in the high jump. And she was the first woman in the world. So not just in the US or not just in North America, but in the world. And this was exciting because I was a young coach. She was a young athlete. And, just the moment that everything seemed to hit perfectly. It was an indoor meet. We were in Canada. It was well past midnight, Valentine's Day. It just actually was one of those things where everything hit at once. We had gone through a situation where we'd left Arizona State University over some philosophical differences with the head coach, and she had just gotten married, and so she was settling into a whole new life of how to deal with things off the track, and so you just never know when you're going to get to deal with an athlete of that ability. And so for everything to kind of piece together at once, that was exciting, definitely. Then the other one, which obviously can't be ignored, was in 1996 when Charles Austin won the gold medal in the Atlanta Olympics. And that was so exciting because, number one, it was on home soil. It was a very interesting competition because even though he was, I don't want to say favored, but I mean, he was one of the top people expected to do well. But as it came down to, he did a little passing game. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the vertical jumps and how all the little nuances of those competitions go. But he had passed an attempt and, basically had to make it on one jump. It was going to either get him a gold medal or maybe a medal, type of thing. And so for him to come through in clutch times like that, I knew I'd seen him do it before. I'd seen him be a clutch performer, and he did it on the biggest stage possible. And so those were my 2, I'd say, most exciting coaching moments, just because I saw athletes that had intense mental ability to come through in competition and pressure situations. And so it's so hard. You can't practice the adrenaline of a competition in practice. So for them to be able to come through when it counted was very rewarding to me.
Well, some amazing stories there, Sue, and 2 pretty significant milestones there in your career.
Yes.
And I've read that you were team staff for the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. Now, were you personal coach to this athlete at the same time, or were you working in a coaching team at that time?
No, I was his personal coach since 1990, and so to be on the team staff at the same time was actually, was even more exciting because I could be there with him through training camp and everything else, and in the village and, practices and everything like that. So no, I was the personal coach for both of these people.
Amazing. So, working with Charles as a personal coach, as a team coach in the Olympic Games, obviously you have some challenges working in a team environment. with other coaches there. Perhaps you had support coaches. Did you ever find working in those roles with a team of coaches was very different to the environment you were used to working one-on-one? If so, how did you manage that? If not, any advice to coaches that are suddenly placed on their own in those environments?
Well, I think it's a different scenario nowadays because personal coaches in the 2022, personal coaches travel much more. They have more access to the athletes on a world championship situation, not so much on Olympic situation. Olympics are still pretty tight, depending on the country that you're from. The countries get so many passes, and so in the States, we have to kind of share those day by day. Because when I was in Tokyo just several months ago, I had a female high jumper on the USA team, and I didn't get the coaching pass until the day she competed. And so before that, I was in an auxiliary setting, so to speak, and couldn't go to the stadium. I could go to the practice track, but not to the Olympic stadium. So we share passes. Some countries have more passes than personal coaches or coaches. And so we actually, on the United States side, encourage if a personal coach can get a coaching pass from another country, like they coach foreign athletes, please do so, because then you will have a better chance. So, you know, I've been on situations on USA teams where the athlete will come with no workouts, no plan of action, nothing. You know, I guess it was a surprise to them to make the team, or their one case, the personal coach was changing jobs, and I guess he just said, well, bye, see you. And she came to the Olympics and he went to the other job. And luckily, I had enough experience with this athlete, meaning just being around her and the events and so on, that we were able to piece together a workout plan for the month or so that we were together. So I'd say to be for future team staffs, you know, is to be prepared, because you might show up where you are expected to help them and develop a workout plan, but more likely you're there to facilitate, to be sure stuff is set out, to make sure the measuring tapes are there, the pit is dug, you know. So you just have to really be flexible and put your ego way away. You know, you can't be in the you can't be in a team staff situation and have a personal ego, because that's setting you up for a disaster.
And, you know, it's a really interesting context, isn't it? Because everyone assumes going to the Olympics, you'd be in this prestigious role. But as you've just alluded to, you know, you're raking pits, you're getting tape measures out, you know, you're thrown into these situations, you know, where you may not even be able to be in the stadium with an athlete when you need
You're not. Right. No, I mean, that's when I was the head coach in 2004. And, you know, my main job was to make sure everybody got to the starting line on time. In other words, I spent the whole time in the practice track area. The organizing committee had the setup for coaches, a little TV. It was a color TV, but it was a little TV. It wasn't a big old one. It was maybe a 27-incher. And with rabbit ears, if you remember what rabbit ears are, the electronic or the antenna. And we were all huddled around this TV back in a shed. And that was the Olympics in 2004. So other places I've been, they've had the big monitors, the screens and so forth. But yeah, I did not go into the main stadium each night until the last athlete was going through the final check-in area. So you hear the crowd cheering and you kind of watch it on TV, literally.
Not quite as one expects as a very young coach, but, you know, again, you've had significant experience there, Sue, working as a head coach. Now, you must have had a bit of a say in terms of who was on your team, or maybe you didn't. Perhaps you can let us know. But what kind of qualities do you look for in a coaching staff working in that kind of environment in Olympic Games or World Championships, when they'll be working with athletes that they may not have worked with before, and, you know, at the pivotal moment of their career?
Right, and that's where it is very, very important, because you are dealing with athletes that it's their livelihood, their career, their money situation potentially, or it could be a first and only time experience for them. They're, at one games and that's it. So you definitely have to be flexible, definitely flexible. Uh, don't plan on getting much rest, because you are a facilitator and you're at the beck and call of the athlete. You're there for the athlete. You're not there for sightseeing. You're not there for entertainment. I've seen coaches who have had their family members go to the games also, like a family vacation. Well, that blew up because that was terrible, because the personal family is being neglected while the coach is taking care of the team. And so, either have your family go early or go late, in a training camp setting. Don't, during the Olympic Games, you are there for, or World Championships, you are there for the athletes, period. And if you have any other thoughts of it, you better change that quickly or don't go. You have to be able to deal with the world record holder potentially and his or her uniquenesses. And then you have to deal, like I said, with the little newcomer who made the team on a fluke. It just happened, and they're like big-eyed and they don't know what's going on. And in some cases that's better, in some cases it's not. As to not knowing the athletes, like you say, you could, if they're responsible, did they get up on time? Do they make the buses on time? There's a time schedule for everything. And, we were getting up at 4:30, 5 in the morning, and you wouldn't get to bed until after midnight. And so maybe you caught a nap during the afternoon, maybe. So you have to be able to really be, again, just be a facilitator and be willing to carry bags, be willing to make sure the shots are weighed in, things that a theoretically head coach doesn't do, that a manager does, but that's what your responsibilities are at a major championship.
Mm. Absolutely. And, pretty humbling, as a coach with huge experience going into this role. But, as you wisely state from experience, the reality is not often what we expect as, certainly young coaches looking up for these roles. So, from your experience now, like, how do young coaches looking to achieve the success you've had, where would they learn about this reality? Are there any programs, or is there any kind of educational pathway or mentorship going on? I'm from England, so, I can talk from this side of the pond, but from your experiences, how do young coaches understand these realities that you've just so well described?
Well, I think, we're making it very publicized. In other words, we're letting people know before they even apply. It's an application process here in the United States. You apply, but then there's criteria set up. So you have to be, for example, you have to serve on like an under 20 team or a smaller team to begin with. You don't just automatically come in and you're on the World Championship or the Olympic staff. So there's a working order of prioritizing meets, where you get the opportunity to experience these things. And as then the USA Track and Field Committee can see who's successful, who's not, who has strengths in certain areas and maybe weaknesses in others areas to work on. I've been on some teams where the head coaches go sit in the stands and they never interact with the athletes. And, that doesn't go in today's world of athletics. That will be the only team you make if that's what happens. The athletes have a major role, a voice in the selection process too. So, as to listening what we're saying and to get experience and through these smaller teams, whether they be a multi-event team, whether it be a smaller USA team, or in the distance runners cases, they have cross-country teams that go that are smaller numbers. So I'd say, as we apply and then work our way up the ladder, so to speak, and their evaluation's done, and, it's kind of weeds you out as you go. So it's not something that's an overnight experience. But again, the application is there. And if you want to be involved and claim you don't know how to be involved, then all you need to do is, they could reach out to me and I can show them where the link is on USA Track and Field, or they can just, if they're a member, it goes out. It's an email. Mm-hmm. So answer the email.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's super interesting, and so you've had significant experience at a very, very high level. And one of the topics we've talked about a lot at Altis is the challenges faced by female coaches, not just in track and field, but across sports performance, so strength and conditioning and other performance sports. Have you ever personally experienced any challenges being a female coach in what's largely a male-dominated environment? And if so, could you share how you've overcome those challenges?
Well, when I first started, it was worse than it is now, definitely. I mean, that's the thing that I agree with female coaches today, that the opportunities are there. They might not be as many as we want, but it's sure a heck of a lot better than it used to be. So we're on the right track. I think the biggest thing is when I first started, the overriding concept was that women could not coach men. So that was a stumbling block that I was running into continually. When Title IX first came in here in the United States in the mid-70s, it was very much, you're a woman's coach and don't get near the men. We know what we're doing. Well, I found that sometimes I'm primarily a jump coach, is kind of the way I've worked through the sequence of everything. And so what I was finding is at the university I was at, that some of the male jumpers were coming after their practice when we were still out there jumping and asking me for help. And I was kind of like, oh boy, I've got to be careful, because then politically that was setting me up as a problem, because then the male coach would get offended and then that would come back onto me. So I had to carefully balance that. But it also showed me that the male athlete was respecting what I was doing as a coach, was seeing that the athletes that I work with, that they were making progress. And so I must know something, or I must have some ideas of what I'm doing, or else the athletes that were on our squad would not be progressing. Mm-hmm. So it's taken, 30, 40 years to work through that. I would say for young female coaches now there's many, let's say, pitfalls along the way, that if you think you're going to get a job just because you're a female, that's the wrong attitude. A lot of coaches I know do have one of these, an unspoken word type of thing where you better get a female on your staff or something like that. Well, you don't want to get in on that. You want to get in on your ability and your talents to coach. You don't want to get a job, I would hope, just because you're a female. And so I would say, you've got to go out of your way, and probably more so than male applicants, and become the best candidate that you possibly can be. So that whether you're a female or a male is irrelevant. It's how well you can coach, how well your successes are on and off the track. Can you handle the responsibilities, of which there are many, of administration, to make sure a team gets where they're supposed to be? Can you order equipment? Can you plan things out? So there's so many tasks involved, and the only way to do them is to learn them, is to do them. So that's why it's really important to get experience, and to not just say, well, I'm female, better give me a chance, or I'm minority, give me a chance, because unfortunately we are behind the 8 ball on numbers. In other words, we do have to fight a little harder to get some equality. And with the staffs the way they're set up now, with combined programs, meaning men and women's programs, the amount of women that do have full-time coaching jobs are definitely a minority, and it is a knocking at the door type of thing where you've got to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get in. But then once you're in, you have a responsibility to yourself and kind of to the rest of the women around to do a good job and to be responsible and to be the very best coach that you can be, so that it's almost like you're standing on the shoulders of other women to help, and there are a lot of women coaches that are, shall we say, the older women coaches, the veterans of the group, that are willing to mentor and to help if you ask for help.
Fantastic. Some great reflections there. So, and, can I ask, so if you were sat on an interview panel and you were interviewing a coach, whether that be a male or female coach, what are the top 3 qualities you would be looking for to recruit that coach for your program?
Well, first of all, I'd say loyalty to the program and to the coaching group, the staff, in total. Knowledge, as to what kind of knowledge they bring to the table. And I guess flexibility too, is to track with 19, 20 different events. You have to be very flexible. You might have a task assigned to you that you don't really care for, but you've got to do it for the sake of the team type of thing. Track and field is a very individual sport, but it's also a team sport, so you have to be able to balance between those two worlds. But I think loyalty to the program, to the school, to the head coach, that's critical.
Yeah, I appreciate the challenges you've been through and what you've achieved is remarkable. So we appreciate you joining us on this chat. It's really interesting to hear your story, and really, really super important for the younger coaches coming up to learn from people with your level of experience.
Well, and I think too, it's one thing with women coaches that you really have to make a decision as to life's balances, because the family situation or having a baby and that type of thing, that's a major pull. And that's why I think we lose a lot of young women coaches, is the family pressures or the family expectations become too much, and the balance, they're not able to handle it. And so I would caution, the younger coaches coming in, don't be fooled. This is a full-time job, and don't, but you can bring your kids to the track. Well, I mean, with the boss's permission. I mean, you can make it work. There are many women out there now that are mothers of older kids, younger kids, and babies that are making it work. So don't use that as an excuse, and male head coaches shouldn't use that as an excuse on why not to hire a woman, because it can work if you want it to work.
No, great advice. And I've just had 2 kids, so I can totally appreciate that as well.
There you go.
It's super hard, but you can make it work. You're right.
Yeah.
Brilliant reflections. Well, Sue, thank you so much for joining us, and we will absolutely share your social details if you're happy to do so for any young coaches looking for mentorship. And we appreciate your support with what we're doing and your offer of support for other coaches. Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, no problem.